Maybe something where I need to have a difficult conversation with someone. I will tell myself those same things. It doesn't change. I will tell myself, I'm not ready yet. I can't do this. Maybe I should hold off for this, right? I start getting all this fear, hesitation, worry, anxiety, all of these things. But I now have proven to myself that I can move forward in spite of that, right? Despite all of those feelings that I have, I now know, I have the awareness of myself and have proven to myself that I can still move forward. And I don't have to be ready. I don't have to feel perfect. I can still feel fear and hesitation, but none of that matters because I just move forward anyway. So discomfort is good. Pain and discomfort are facts of life, right? They're inevitable. There is nothing that you can do to fully rid yourself of pain, discomfort, fear, or any other seemingly negative feeling that you can experience. So what? At first, that idea might seem bleak, right? Why do we have to suffer? That's the wrong way to look at it, though. If pain and suffering is inevitable, then that means that we naturally have two choices. We move away from it or move towards it. If we move away from it, we spend our lives in a state of fear and worry, the thought of minimizing the pain and discomfort that we face in each moment informing our every action. The issue here, ignoring the fact that this would lead to a likely very unfulfilling life, right, is that pain, suffering, and discomfort are still inevitable, right? This doesn't change that. Even with all of the mental energy dedicated to avoiding it, we will never escape it. On the other hand, if we move towards it, if we chase pain and discomfort, all these negative experiences and sensations become unaffecting and harmless at worst, and actually a positive and growth-inducing thing at best. Rather than becoming riddled with anxiety and worry, we become almost immune to it. We chase pain and discomfort as opportunities to grow, to become better. And in those moments when pain and discomfort are inevitable, we already know how to handle it and twist it into a positive experience. With this, we can live a life of ultimate positivity, where both the good and the bad are good, where we accept life in its entirety and embrace the full spectrum of existence. Now, this idea isn't new. It's an idea almost as old as an idea can be, but that doesn't make it any less powerful, right? So the acceptance of your life in its entirety, of your fate in its entirety, that's one of the fundamentals of Stoicism, a philosophy that, supported Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, during some of Rome's most difficult times. Musashi, one of Japan's greatest samurai, would go to statues of the gods and pray for them to, not for any assistance or help, that he would pray for them to test the lowly Musashi with hardship. Even in the modern day, the idea of chasing suffering is what allows someone like David Goggins, for instance, to turn his life around like few people ever have, right? So all of this is, if you approach life with the intent to avoid pain and difficulty and discomfort, then you will never allow yourself to reach your full potential. You'll never be able to get the most out of your life. But if you approach life ready to jump headfirst into the struggle, into suffering, life will unfold before you, making and something your growth in equal measure. It's hard for me to read. So life isn't some kind of external thing, right? It's an experience inside your own head. It's all inside you. And as cliche as it sounds, that's why life is what you make of it, right? You choose whether you will avoid it or you will embrace it, because the pain, the suffering, the negativity, all of that is inevitable. But what we can control is our reaction to it, right? You can make, and I know I've said this a lot, but you can make the entirety of life something that is good, something that you can grow from and improve from and experience and embrace, or you can make it into something that you worry about and something that you want to avoid, right? You can turn the things that are negative into positives, right? Because the entirety of your existence is within your own head, right? And so there's this idea that I read by David Goggins in his book, It Can't Hurt Me, that it just kind of like hit different, right? And he talks about, and I'm not Christian, but I still kind of appreciate this idea. He talks about visualizing his life coming to an end, right? Dying and seeing himself in heaven, right? Standing before God. And in this moment, God shows him the ideal version of himself, right? He's giving a presentation and he shows David Goggins the version of David Goggins that he could have been if he did everything right, the life that he could have had if he stopped being so comfortable, right? God says to him that this is who you were supposed to be. He imagines what it would feel like to see that contrast, to be confronted by God with the person that he could have been, but to not have had the strength to become that. How would that feel? He then thought of himself as doing the opposite, as pushing himself so hard that even God would be watching him and writing down more, saying that he didn't expect he would do that, right? And so I think this idea, and that's basically where I stopped writing because I didn't finish that one, but I think this idea is interesting because I talked about this a little bit before in another video, but the idea that, the only thing that exists is now, right now, this moment, the present moment. And the decisions that you make right now are you, in a sense, right? Or the decisions you make right now are the result of you. And that sounds stupid, but essentially, if you make decisions that, are a result of an avoidance of pain, right? The framework through which you view life is that you want to avoid pain and avoid discomfort and avoid negativity, right? You want to reject those realities of life. Then the decisions that you make will reflect that, right? And that will lead to you, that reinforces itself, and you will become a person who is unable to attain the potential that you could have otherwise, right? And over time, that adds up. And so if you imagine the person who you are at the end of your life and the things that you would have done, having the perspective, like shifting your perspective from wanting to avoid pain and wanting to avoid discomfort and moving that towards actually chasing it and wanting it and viewing it as a way to grow, will cause you to just make so many different decisions that add up over time and lead you to have an entirely different experience, right? And one kind of way in which this has kind of like made itself present in my own life, especially recently, is, like I mentioned before, I've started going to jiu-jitsu. I don't know if I've messaged that, if I've said anything about that in a previous video, but essentially I started taking jiu-jitsu classes, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, maybe, around a month ago, maybe. And one thing that I've noticed is, like, almost every time, especially when I was starting out, almost every time before the class, I would feel this intense desire to not do it. I did not want to go, because going in there, it's like you have a brutal warm-up for 40 minutes. It's a 2-hour-long class. You're warming up for 40 minutes, and then you're drilling for an hour, and then you're just, like, fighting for 20 minutes, right? That's basically how it often goes. And it's hard, right? You go in there, and it's like, I feel like I'm dying. It's painful. It's uncomfortable. It feels bad, right? And then you have the fear of it beforehand, right? And then you're worried that you might get injured, and there's all these kinds of things that go into your head. But every time that I have those feelings and I push myself through it anyway, and then I go, at the end of it, I always feel amazing. Like, I feel euphoric almost. And I think that happens a lot of the time when you just push yourself past, like when you allow yourself to move past pain, to move past discomfort, and do what it was that you wanted to do or that you were going to do anyway, regardless of that. I think it's like, it's rewarding, right? Because you feel like you start to become aware, you start to notice that you are actually you are capable of doing these things, right? The things that might scare you or that you might want to avoid because you feel pain, if you move to them, if you move towards them and you pass through them, right? You will start to convince yourself, you'll start to realize that you are actually capable of things that you didn't know you were before, right? And that's just a wild feeling. And the same thing happens if you go for a long run, right? When that's because, you can get like runner's high and dopamine and all that. And that's part of it. But I think something just comes from knowing that you are capable of taking those steps in the face of pain and fear and discomfort. And I think that is a crazy thing. I think that is so important, right? Another great example of this is I used to take cold showers. I stopped for a while, started them again, stopped again. I finally started taking cold showers again, I think maybe 3 months ago, right? It had been on and off until there, but like 2.5 months ago I started, and it has been an amazing experience, right? Because getting in the shower, And what I often do is I don't take a fully cold shower, but I start it off hot and then I go cold for like the second half of the shower. And the thing is, every time I do not want to do it, right? Like I'm in there, I'm nice, I'm comfortable, I'm in this hot water, right? And it's just, it feels good. And the last thing I want to do is turn it all the way down and get that cold water, right? Depending, it's winter here in California, and it's like, it doesn't get too cold here. Not like when I was up north, but it's still like the water gets chilly, right? And that's the last thing you want. It's painful, definitely uncomfortable, right? And it just feels awful. And then you have like all these feelings of hesitation leading up to it, right? But then, despite all that, you just turn the water down and you brace yourself, and it comes, and it's not as bad as you think, right? In fact, sometimes it actually feels kind of good getting that shock, and then, getting all that cold water, it's refreshing, right? But regardless of that, it always feels hard. You always feel this barrier. And let me make sure I'm still recording. Yeah, it always feels hard. You always feel like there's this barrier in the way of you actually doing it, right? But then you do it anyway. And then you start to convince yourself that you can. And one thing that has been amazing for me is that I've started to realize that when I'm in there, right, I always have this feeling of, oh, I'm not ready yet. And it's like, what does that even mean? Right? But I'll be like, should I turn the water cold now? And I'd be like, no, I'm not ready yet. I got to stay in the hot water a little longer. And it's like, what does that mean? What does it mean to be ready? Right? Like, that's literally just my brain trying to come up with excuses. But then that means I've now started a practice where I will like repeatedly be telling myself, I'm not ready yet. And then I'll just do it anyway. And then I'll realize it wasn't about being ready. That has nothing to do with it, right? And I step over that hesitation. I step over those boundaries, and I realize that I'm able to take down these walls that I put up in order to prevent myself from moving forward and from doing things, right? And that doesn't just apply when it comes to exercise, when it comes to cold showers, because I realize when I'm doing things in my life, right, making life decisions, something having to do with work, maybe something where I need to have a difficult conversation with someone, I will tell myself those same things. It doesn't change. I will tell myself, I'm not ready yet. I can't do this. Maybe I should hold off for this, right? I start getting all this fear, hesitation, worry, anxiety, all of these things. But I now have proven to myself that I can move forward in spite of that, right? Despite all of those feelings that I have, I now know, I have the awareness of myself, and I've proven to myself that I can still move forward. And I don't have to be ready. I don't have to feel perfect. I can still feel fear and hesitation, but none of that matters because I just move forward anyway. And I think that is an amazing just ability and skill to have. And I'm still so early in my development of that. But even now, I've already been able to see such like massive effects by just being able to shift my perspective, right? And really towards moving in that direction. And so that has been something that's been huge. And I wanted to make a video on it, partially because I don't have that much else written in that notebook, but also because this has really been a big thing in my life this last couple months, right? And so this is something that I've been realizing, and that has been great because it also just feels amazing, because you start realizing that you have all this potential, right? You start realizing that you can just do things, right? And it might feel uncomfortable, it might be painful, you might feel fear, you might feel hesitation, but you can do them anyway. And that's an amazing feeling to have, because regardless of anything external, you're proving to yourself that you can do the things that you set out to do. And I think that that's an amazing feeling. But yeah, hopefully this video was interesting, and hopefully it helps you. But yeah, chase pain, chase discomfort, especially when you don't feel like it. I didn't feel like coming in here and making this video. I really didn't feel like it. I was actually taking a very nice nap after I got back from work, but it's important, right? And I got to do this, so I did it, right? I might have felt a little uncomfortable, especially coming here and speaking on camera, but did it anyway. And now I'm feeling good, right? I'm feeling good having done this, and I'm happy about it. So that's a general kind of like rule of thumb that you can take when you make your decisions. Do you feel a little bit of hesitation? Do you feel a little bit of anxiety, worry? Do you not want to do it? Do it anyway. It'll feel good. I can't think of many times that I've regretted doing the thing that I still feel that I feel like I want to avoid in that sense, right? Doing the hard thing. Yeah. All right.